just so if they need to, that they know that's fine.
Oh, no. Typically, if they're gonna leave, they usually sit in the back if they're going to like an after class after this or
Mm-hmm.
something. But typically, I don't think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just thinking it was lunchtime, you know.
Oh,
You
he's
make
so
me
scared.
nervous. Hold your hand up. Thank you.
It is quite a dangerous step. Give it 2 minutes. Yes. Mm. So I'll start in about 2 minutes. Hi, everybody. Oh, that's super loud. I'm just gonna get started, and then as people are coming in, they'll just get seated down. But I just wanted to do a quick introduction of our storyteller. So, as you know, each February we come together to celebrate Black History Month. It's a time for us to reflect on the profound impact African Americans have had on this nation's history. Today, we're going to honor Black history through story, song, and verse. The rich tapestry of Black culture comes to life through the captivating storytelling of Sister Martha Raff. We invite you to immerse yourself in the powerful songs, poetry, and stories, each one a tribute to the voices, struggles, and triumphs that continue to inspire us all. So let's give her a warm welcome on stage as she begins to give us some fun stories.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Well, I already had a warm welcome from your staff, and I'm so glad to see all of you. And that song is just to remind me and remind you why we're here on this world. It's to let our light shine, to be who you can be, and to share it with others. And that's what I do with my storytelling. Anybody heard of a griot? One, two, three. Okay. Then I need to tell you, let me follow my directions here. Just because I know about that hearing thing, and it's important to me that you hear what I say and I hear what you say. Did you know you were going to say something today? Oh, well, you are. And you started out by joining me in my song, and you're going to continue as we go along this journey together. A griot is, in West Africa, a storyteller, a musician, a historian, and a member of the community that binds the community together by telling their genealogy. And I don't do all of those things, but I do a lot of those things. And I hope that you will be able to share with someone what is a griot? A storyteller. What is a griot? And let me hear you say, What is griot? What is a storyteller in West Africa? A griot. Now, you're going to see that word spelled in different ways, but the way it's usually spelled is Griot, and you don't pronounce the T. So, a griot is a storyteller, and I belong to an organization called the Griot Circle of Maryland, and this is one of our books that we published so that you could see that word griot. Some of you may have heard griot in a special book called Roots. Anybody remember Roots? Mm-hmm. By Alex Haley. And in that book, he introduces us to the griot that comes to the village where Kunta Kinte lived. And this is what happened. When the griot came, the children would get excited. The mothers and the fathers would gather underneath of the baobab tree. And the baobab tree has lots of branches sticking out. It looks like it's upside down, like the roots are on top. And under the baobab tree, the griot would share a story. Maybe it would have animals in it, but if it did, those animals represented some people in their village. And let's see what people are represented in this story that the griot told in Roots. Once a young man was walking towards the village and went down by the waterside, and as he got close, he saw a net, a big hump under the net, and he could just see a crocodile. Oh no, he needed to get away from there. But this crocodile could talk. And the crocodile said, wait, I'm stuck in this net. Don't leave me, please help me. And the young man said, I don't want to help you, you'll eat me. Oh no, said the crocodile, I won't eat you, you'll help me. I think I would take care of getting away, and so I could live and you could live. No, said the young man, I'm not going to help you. I'll tell you what, said the crocodile. You come and pull the net off of me, and I'll keep my big mouth closed. That could work, couldn't it? If the crocodile just kept his big mouth closed, I would just go up, and he began to walk closer and reach down, and he began to get closer and pull up the net. And as the net got pulled up, the crocodile opened his big mouth and grabbed the young man, and he was caught. Wait, you said you wouldn't eat me. That's what I said, but that's not how the world works. If you do something good in the world, you're going to get bad in return. What, said the young man? That's not the way the world works. Well, let's see if you don't believe me. Let's see if you believe somebody else. Let's see what happens when the first person comes along here, and we'll ask them. And the first creature that came along was an old donkey. The donkey could barely get down the road. Mr. Donkey, can you tell this crocodile the way the world works? If you do something good, you should get something good back, right? Not, said the donkey. That's not how it works. Look at me. I'm old and worn out, and my master just put me out with no food and nothing to take care of me. I was good to him all of these years and just put me out just like that. See, said the crocodile, good gets you bad. Wait, said the young man, just wait a minute. Look, here comes another one. And down the road came an old horse. Nah, said the horse. And the horse could barely make it down the road. What was it about this road? And the horse looked at the crocodile and the boy and the net and, I see, said the horse. You didn't listen, did you? You didn't listen to your old grandmother. And the young man said, I listened. I did something good, and now you're giving me something bad, and that's not the way it should be. Oh, yes, said the horse. Oh, yes, that's the way it is. I was so good to my family. I took the children for rides on my back, and I helped to pull the plow, and I did all those things, and look at me now, all worn out. I got a dip in my back from riding those children, and those children just grew up and went away and left me alone. And here I am today looking at you saying, that's the way the world works. You do good, you get bad. Wow. The young man just knew that he was getting pulled further and further into the water with that crocodile, and just then a little rabbit came jumping along and seeing what was going on and said, whoa, wait a minute, what's happening here, said the rabbit. Well, said the young man, I helped the crocodile, and now the crocodile wants to eat me and called me, told me that I was getting bad for doing good. Is that the way it works, Mr. Rabbit? Well, I don't know, said the rabbit. Maybe if I could see what happened, I could tell you what's supposed to be. And so the crocodile said, well, it's easy. It's not hard. Look, he was standing over there, and I was over here with the net. No, said the rabbit, show me what happened. And so the crocodile put the boy over there and said, he was standing over here, and then the crocodile went over here and said, and I was over here with the net on me, and grab him, said the rabbit. And with that, the young man grabbed the net and pulled it tight on the crocodile and said, now I'm going to do good, because I'm going to tell my family to come and catch this crocodile and have crocodile soup for dinner. Well, that's what happened. And the men in the village took that big crocodile and reminded the young man, yes, you can get good for doing good, but also remember, when you got some business to take care of care of your business and don't worry about somebody else's business. And that's what happened on that story. Well, the other thing that griots, I get help with is getting to meet some of the people that help them to remember the history and to remember the stories that they share. Usually griots are become griots because of their family. So if their father was a griot, then the children would become griots, and it would be passed down that way. And one of the people that helps us to remember about griots and what they do is Alex Haley. And my book is a little brown and a little torn, but it's signed by Alex Haley when I met him at a storytelling event. And so that helped me to remember his book and to pass it on. Well, we're going to talk about Kunta Kinte, what happened to him. Does anybody not know? Anybody? Everybody here knows who Kunta Kinte is? And some people tell us we shouldn't talk about slavery. Guess what? We're going to talk about slavery. And why? Because everybody in the world has had slavery in their culture. And so in the United States, we shouldn't just think about slavery as a black thing. We shouldn't just think of it as a biblical thing. We should think of it as something that has happened all over the world and that we need to share so that it can stop happening, because it's even happening today. People getting kidnapped and forced to work without pay. But there are some good things that we can learn from talking about slavery. Kunta Kinte was captured while he was out looking for a tree trunk to make a drum with. And he was brought to these United States. Anybody know where he came into the United States at? Annapolis, right here in Maryland. And he got off of that ship and was taken to Virginia. But we don't know how many other people, thanks to Alex Haley, we know about Kunta Kinte, but we don't know about all of those other people that were on that boat and got off that boat at Annapolis and were held in slavery by people who came and took them. One of them could have been my ancestor, because my family has found out a little bit about the family members, our ancestors, who were held in slavery. And I want to tell you about Robert Hall, the person in our family that we can go back as far as the early 1800s and know about him. It was a small farm in Harford County, Maryland. Anybody been to Harford County? Okay. Then you know we're talking about north of here. And on that farm, it was dusk. Dinner time had just ended, and the white family was sitting down and enjoying that after dinner glow. You know, got a full stomach and something to drink. And outside, a brown cinnamon colored woman was just taking off her apron, wiping her face, and getting ready to have her own meal, even though she had been working all day from sunup breakfast to gathering the garden and then making dinner. Louisa Berry didn't know how she came to be on this farm or how she came to be held in slavery, but she didn't know how to get out. She only knew that if she did, there could be big trouble. But just then, even in fact, even in spite of how tired she was, she heard a voice calling her. Good evening, Miss Louisa. It was Robert Hall. He was a free black man. He had been working on the Henderson farm and gained his freedom. And now he was hoping to marry Louisa and get her freedom. Good evening, Robert, said Louisa. I'm so glad to see you. I'm really glad to see you, said Robert, because I have some good news. Did you know that Mr. Watts said I could buy your freedom? Really, said Louisa. Yes. And then the door of the farmhouse opened and out stepped Mr. Watts and he said, not so fast, Robert. Tell her all of our agreement. Well, Louisa, said Robert, I have to work 2 years for Mr. Watts and then you'll be free. 2 years, said Louisa. Can you do it? Yes, I can, he said. And that's what happened. For the next 2 years, Robert Hall worked for Mr. Watts at no pay. And when the year end came, he was ready to take Louisa as his wife. But there was one thing that stopped them. Even though they lived on different farms, they were man and wife before then. And they had conceived a child. And now there was Louisa and there was Fanny. And Mr. Watts said, you know, that baby belongs to me too. But Mr. Watts said, the baby can't work for you. If I take Louisa, you can't do anything with her. You can't have the baby unless you work another year for me. And that's what Robert Hall had to do. He worked another year, and come time to take his family home, there was another baby. Tabitha Ann was a sickly-looking little girl. She could barely keep her eyes open long enough for them to know what color they were. And Mr. Watts looked at Robert and Louisa, Fanny running around, and this little, well, said Mr. Watts, I guess I'll have to let you go. That little girl, she ain't gonna live past her second or third month from now. And without waiting for him to change his mind, Robert and Louisa took their girls and left as quick as they could. And Louisa, with the love of a mother, took care of her baby until one day she was as strong and happy and running around playing as her brothers and sisters. Yes, I said brothers and sisters. Louisa and Robert Hall had many more children, and their children went on to do great things. They went on to marry and have children, and their children went on to school and learned to read and write and went on to college and became doctors and lawyers and librarians and storytellers. And so we thank Robert Hall for that commitment and that love of his family that brought them all this far along their journey. Amen. That story is in this book. I am a contributing author to a book that was published by the Harford County Historical Society. So if you have any interest in Harford County, that story is in there, and other stories about Harford County. That county is 250 years old, and so they published a book as a part of their anniversary. Well, I think that's one, Robert Hall showed us one way that African Americans gained their freedom, but there was another way, and it was called the Underground Railroad. And when I think about that, I think about this song about the railroads, and it's called the Freedom Train. And you may have heard this with some of the folk singers, and it goes, "Here comes the freedom train, you better hurry down, just like Harriet Tubman, it's coming into your hometown. Inside the freedom train, you'll find some precious things, those words of liberty and the writings we should never forget." Who ever heard of W.E.B. Du Bois? Okay, Du Bois wrote, "The problem of this 20th century is the problem of the color line." And he was the author, the publisher, and editor of the Crisis magazine, the NAACP's publication. So we should keep his words in the Freedom Train. And who knows what Rosa Parks said to a white bus driver that told her to give up her seat in the colored section of the bus. Rosa Parks said, "No. I can't hear you. No. I can't hear you." No. Rosa Parks said, "No." That one word is more than enough to remember her, but Rosa Parks also is quoted as saying, "You must never be fearful about what you are doing when it is right." Rosa Parks was the beginning of the Montgomery, Alabama bus boycott and the beginning of integration in our country. I think that we should do one more, my favorite one. Lorraine Hansberry. Anybody know about her? She wrote A Raisin in the Sun. And she also wrote gave a speech to some young people, and she told them to remember, you are young, gifted, and black. And that's a good thing to be. Well, we remember those people, but there are a lot of people that don't get remembered. And this is one of them. His name was Lewis. Late one night, Lewis was sleeping in the cabin on the plantation, and he was surprised to hear a knock on the door. And it was Mary, come to tell him something she had heard up at the big house. They're going to sell you, Lewis, she said. The master got somebody who wants to buy you, and they're going to sell you. You need to run. You need to run today. Lewis looked at her and wondered, he wasn't ready. He didn't have any family that he had to get together. His mother had died, and I'm telling you, Mary said, you need to run. And she hurried back to the big house where she was supposed to be. And Lewis thought, this is my time. I better take it. And so he did. He slipped out that night and looked up at the sky that his mother had told him about, the North Star, and he followed that North Star and went right down the path to the big river. And he had heard about that river, and he'd heard that if you just got across to the other side was freedom. How could he get across the other side? He walked along the bank of the river, and he couldn't believe it. There was a boat and oars, and he knew he only had two choices. If he got across that river, they couldn't catch him because the dogs could only sniff along the ground. They couldn't sniff along the water. And if he tried his best, he thought he could get across there. He could. Slipped the boat into the water, climbed in, and started rowing. And the water looked smooth, but when he got out there, he could see how hard it was to. And he finally realized that instead of going straight across the water, he should be going in an angle. And so that worked a lot better. And he could see he was getting closer and closer and closer. He made it. He made it to the other side of the river, and now what did he do? He put the boat onto the bank. Maybe somebody else could use it to get to their freedom. And he started walking. And he hadn't gone very far when he saw a house and a light in the window, and he didn't know whether he could trust the people in this house or not. So he hid in the barn, and the next morning, out of the house came a black man. Now, was he free or was he? Lewis picked up a stone and he threw it over towards the man to get his attention. The man looked and he saw him and he said, "Oh, did you come across the river?" "Yes, sir," said Lois. "Good, I'm glad to see you. Come on in, we're just getting breakfast." And that's how he met Mr. Miller. And Mr. Miller was the first stop on the Underground Railroad. He told him, "I'm going to take you in town, and then you will find someone else that will help you get to Canada." "Canada?" said Lewis. What's Canada?" "That's a place where you'll really be free, and your old master won't be able to get you." And so Lewis went into town. He got hidden in a secret room in Mr. Crawley's house. And after a few days, no sign of his master, they let Lewis walk around town. And Lewis had never seen anything like it. All the people and the horses and people just looked at him and kept going. Lewis thought this was great. And Mr. Crowley said, no, you need to go to Canada. And Lewis said, well, I don't really want to go to Canada. I just want to stay here. And so they let him stay there. And they even got him a job in the grocery store, stocking the shelves. And Lewis would go to church and start learning to read the Bible. But it couldn't last. It couldn't last because one day when he was in the back getting out some cans, he heard a voice, a very familiar voice, a voice that used to tell him, Lewis, get going, get to work. A voice of his old master. And Lewis was lucky enough to go out a back door and to go back into hiding as fast as he could. And Mr. Crowley said, we're going to send you on to Cincinnati, and then you'll be able to go to Canada. And that's what they did. And Lewis spent a few days in Cincinnati, and he liked it. He liked that city and the people in it, and he was getting back into his routine of doing a job Monday through Saturday, going to church on Sunday, and one day he was coming out of his job and gotcha! A marshal grabbed him and said, you are going to court because I know you belong to somebody. And that's what he did. Took him to court and said, this man, there was his old master, belongs to him. And we just need a decision from you because the Underground Railroad people were there and they were saying, you can't take him. He's on free ground. And Lewis was sitting there just as sad as could be, his head down, and couldn't understand all the legal jargon that was going on. And when he looked up, he realized he was sitting pretty close to this white man, and he didn't think he should be that close to a white man, and so he pushed his chair back. And when he did, nobody looked at him. And there was space between him and the lawyers and he thought, maybe I'll push my chair back some more. And so he pushed himself back and nobody looked at him. They were busy arguing with the judge, and Lewis looked, and behind him, the door to the outside was just a few feet away. And all of the black people that were huddled in front of that door could see what he was doing, and they didn't say a word. Lewis got up out of his chair and he looked at the people. They just moved in front of him. And he looked at the people And they just moved in front of him, and he was almost at the door, and someone put a hat on him, covered up his eyes, and pushed him out the door. And no one was after him. No one was looking for him, but they would be in a few minutes. What could he do? Where could he go? Lewis thought of the only place that they wouldn't be looking for him, and that was the cemetery. He knew the gravedigger there, and he would hide them. And as fast as he could, Lewis went running to the cemetery. He found the gravedigger and asked him to hide him. And inside the courtroom, they suddenly looked for Lewis. They looked for Lewis, and he wasn't nowhere to be. He's gone, said the sheriff. And they went looking for him for days. But this time, when the Underground Railroad said to him, "We're going to send you to Canada," he said, "Yes, I'll go to Canada. I will go to Canada." And that's what they did. They got him up to Canada, and Lewis found what real freedom was. Now, what happened to him in Canada? That's another story. But that's the end of this story. That's one of my favorite stories, and the reason why, it's found in this book by Julius Lester called Long Journey Home. And Julius Lester was an author, a researcher, and so he did research that showed that that was a true story of how Lewis became invisible and got away from those who wanted to enslave him and got off to freedom. So, talk about slavery, talk about freedom, and remember those people. I want you to help me with a song that says, "Remember Me." And when I point at you, you're going to say, "Remember me," just like me. Tell a story and remember me. Remember me. Tell a story and remember me. Tell a story and remember me. Remember me. Uh-huh. Sing a song and remember me. Sing a song and remember me. Sing a song and remember me. Remember me. How else can you do it? Tell a poem and remember me. Tell a poem and remember me. Tell a poem and remember me. Remember me. Remember me. This is, give yourselves a hand. You did okay. I'm going to get you all loud before we're all finished. I think I am. But even though we talk about slavery being bad, with the end of slavery, we also saw a little bit of change, but then those people who don't believe in equality went on to make laws that kept us separated and segregated. And so that was a time when there were signs that said colored, and and signs that said white, and schools that only whites could attend, and schools that only blacks could attend. And that had to end. What kind of world, what kind of country would we have if people like W.E.B. Du Bois and Lorraine Hansberry and Rosa Parks couldn't contribute to our country? And so there was a legal decision by our Supreme Court that there could not be separate schools for blacks and whites. And there were some people who still had to struggle, even after that Supreme Court decision, to make it happen. And one of those people, one person who did that was Daisy Bates. Let me hear you say her name. Daisy Bates. One of the things that griots do is they keep the ancestors alive. So Daisy Bates isn't with us anymore, but she was someone who helped integrate Central High School in Little Rock, Arkansas. And this is how it happened. As she was working on her papers, getting ready for September, when there were 9 black children who were going to go into Central High School in Little Rock. And Daisy Bates looked up, and through her portrait window came a brick that she was lucky enough to avoid. And her husband, L.C. Bates, came running up from the basement to say, "Are you all right? Are you all right?" "I'm fine," she said. But the rock not only broke their window, on the rock was a note attached, and it said, "Stop it, or else the next time it will be a bomb." And Elsie looked at Daisy and said, "Are you sure?" And she said, "I'm sure. This is what we have to do. Those children have agreed to go, and we're going to do all we can to help them." And so on that September morning, 8 of the children gathered at Daisy Bates' home. She had called a white minister and asked him if he would walk with the children to the school, because they were told, and their parents were told, that it wouldn't be a good idea if the parents came with them, because it would just aggravate the community. And so Reverend Ogden agreed to walk with them to go to school for the first day. And it just so happened that one of the children didn't know about meeting with Miss Bates. And so Elizabeth Eckhart went to the school by herself, not knowing that the other children, when they started towards the school, they saw the crowds. They saw how angry and how hateful they were. And they saw that the local police were not able to control them. And so those children went back to Mrs. Bates' home. But Elizabeth, she went by herself, and she could not get close to the school because of the crowds yelling at her, spitting on her, telling her to go away. And when she couldn't take it anymore, she turned and started walking back. And she could only see that there was a bench for the bus stop just yards away. And if she could get there, she could keep them from harming her. Maybe they would know that she was leaving. And so she made it to the bench and she sat down. And there was a white man sitting on the bench too. And he put his hand around her and said, "Don't let them see you cry." And she didn't. And the bus came, and she could just make it onto the bus. And she took the bus to her mother's school, and it was only when she got to her mother that she let those tears flow, that all of the hatred and the yelling and the crowds had brought upon her. Now, there was nothing else that Daisy Bates could do. She thought that the crowds would respect a minister coming, but they didn't. And it went so far as the President of the United States, who was Dwight Eisenhower, called out the National Guards to help those children get into school. And it was a rough year. The children, those white children, the hatred had been given to them from their parents. They couldn't have gotten it from just being born that way. But they went on. Those 9 children went on to go to school. One of them had to get out because of an incident, but they would still be known as the Little Rock 9. And Daisy Bates, she and her husband had a newspaper, and because of their participation in the school integration, the advertisers went down, down, and down until they were not able to keep the newspaper going. And Daisy Bates was very active in her community. And so it was not surprising when one of her white friends came to visit her one day and said, "How you doing, Daisy?" She said, "I'm making it." And he said, "I'm trying too. You know, I've been to lots of meetings and all kinds of topics, but it always comes down to the school integration becoming a topic of the meeting. And I thought I could talk to some of my friends and talk to some of the people I know, but they would not hear it. And when they knew that I was in favor of integration, suddenly no one would talk to me. I even had a friend who was walking down the sidewalk, and when he saw me coming, he walked to the other side. And you know, my business is losing some clients. I don't know what we're gonna do, but I plan on staying, and I plan on doing the right thing. And that's what he did until his wife could not tolerate the phone calls, and his children were going to school and being bullied. And so Daisy knew that yes, there were some white people who were willing to help, but there were a lot more who believed in integration but didn't speak up. One day, Daisy went to Washington, D.C., and she met another white friend who said, "Did you hear about Tom and his son? said, no, what happened? Said his son was, I, he was having a hard time. I even saw it once when he was at a movie theater and some boys, they were bullying him and he just wouldn't say anything. And finally, I just walked over. I didn't say anything, but I think the fact that I walked over stopped them from bothering him. But you know, that was what was happening to him all the time. And I'm sad to say, he couldn't take it anymore and committed suicide. I don't believe it, said Daisy. Daisy Bates, she gave a lot of herself and her family, her newspaper business, but she also knew that there were other people who were doing the same, who were giving to the last ultimate gift of their own life. And so, in 1959, Daisy Bates did a yeoman's job of helping to integrate Central High School. And today, in Little Rock, Arkansas, you can see across the street from Central High School a monument to that integration situation, remembering Daisy Bates and the Little Rock Nine. Remember me. Take some time and remember me. Take some time and remember me. Take some time and remember me. Remember me. Remember Daisy Bates. Ashe. That's the end of that. Well, I think there's one more thing I want to do, and that is to tell you about my favorite griot, and her name is Mary Carter Smith. And this is her picture. And Mary Carter Smith also grew up in the South, Alabama, but she moved to Baltimore with her family when she was a teenager. And she discovered that she was good at remembering poems and stories, and people liked to hear it. And she became a teacher, and her students loved to hear her tell stories. And so, one day, she went to a program where there was a storyteller. And she said, this person is making their living by telling stories? And they told her yes. And Mary said, well, I could do that. And they said yes. And her family asked her, are you gonna do that? And she said, yes. And that's what she did. She left the school system and she became a full-time storyteller and was renowned in her field. She would tell stories on a radio show that she had for almost 25 years at Morgan State University, and she told stories across the country and in Africa and in Europe. And she was the founder of the Griot Circle of Maryland. I told you the local Black storytelling organization, and the co-founder of the National Association of Black Storytellers. And so I hope you will remember Mary Carter Smith. What's her name? Mary Carter Smith. And she leaves us with this poem that's called Us. Africa Afro. Well, before I tell this poem, I do have one other thing that I have to share with you so that we're all on the same page. How many people here are of African descent? Yes, I got one. Okay, now I'm going to tell you, I'm going to remind you what our scientists, I guess they are anthropologists, where did humanity begin? In Africa. So how many of us are of African descent? All of us, okay? And so this poem by Mary Carter Smith, it talks about us, and it's really all of us. Us, Afro, natural, cornrows too, little, big, real, wig, dried hair, fried hair, big, bad, and bald. Africa is mother of us all. We could not choose our birth color. We do choose our heart color. Say it clear and loud. We are African. We are African and proud. Us, Afro, natural, cornrows too. Little, big, real, wig, fried hair, dried hair, big, bad, and bald. Africa is mother of us all. We are one people. Us. Thank you. Now, one of the things that I always like to do in my sessions is to let you ask questions, see if there are things you want to know that I might know, or things you know that I don't know. And so this is your time. You can ask any kind of questions. And if you don't ask questions, then I ask you questions, and then that could be, oh. Okay, let me start with how many people have taken a Black History class or done something in that area? Okay, great, great. So there would be some, the other thing I would ask is how many of you have met someone famous, infamous, that you think should be remembered in Black history? Okay, who?
My grandmother who raised me.
Okay, what's her name?
Bernice.
Bernice.
One of those unknown persons who do a lot of sacrifice on my behalf.
Okay. The thing that, again, let's say griots do, we say people's names so that they will be remembered. And the African proverb is, as long as someone's name is spoken, they are not dead. They're still a part of us. Dorothy Height you met. Okay. Can you tell us anything about Dorothy Height? I mean, just why was it special to you to meet her?
At a convention, I'm a Delta.
Okay. Okay, she was a Delta. She was a member of your sorority. I also met Dr. Height. She was the person that was trained by Mary McLeod Bethune. And so I have a lot of respect for Mary McLeod Bethune, who started a college in Florida, and then also started the women's organization. Anybody else? Yes. I have to say it a little bit louder.
Thurgood Marshall.
Thurgood Marshall. Well, you know, I feel special about him because I'm from Baltimore. And so, you too?
No.
You met him.
Oh, yes. He was my father's frat guy.
Okay, hold on just a minute.
Yeah, he was my father's fraternity brother.
Okay.
So I got the honor of sitting on his lap as a little baby. And I understand, although they told me I don't remember, that I was the first to try the doll thing. He tried it out on me. I can't attest to that because I don't remember. But that's what Mom told me.
Okay. Okay, next.
I have one more.
Hold on just a minute.
Doug Williams.
Okay, hold on just a minute. Microphone is good.
Maya Angelou.
Oh, you met Maya, Dr. Maya Angelou. I don't have a chance of meeting her, but being at an event with her. And, well, I did meet her. Let me take that back. When her first book came out, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, I was a librarian in Baltimore, and that library association had an event with her. And so, how could I forget? I have an autographed, I have her autograph on it, document from that event. Okay, you wanted to add one other person?
I want to add Doug Williams because we're close to the Super Bowl. And Doug Williams was one of the first black quarterbacks to win a Super Bowl.
All right, Doug Williams. Hey, all right. Y'all won't ask questions. Who's gonna watch the Super Bowl? Everybody. Okay. Do we have someone else that wanted to share? Right here, could you take the microphone back to her?
I'd like us to remember my father. His name is George Alfred McCormick. He was a Montford Point Marine.
Mm-hmm.
Those Marines were the first African Americans to be allowed to be in the Marine Corps.
Mm-hmm.
And in early 2000s, all of those gentlemen received a Congressional Gold Medal.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah, let's give a hand for that. My brother was a Marine. He is a Marine. He's in the Marine. But he's very proud of being a Marine, and he still does activities with retired Marines. Okay, anybody else?
I'll give you one.
Good.
I had the honor of going to high school with a gentleman who was the first black Heisman Trophy winner, Ernie Davis.
Oh.
He was elected, in our high school, he was elected president of the class in our junior year. And in our senior year, he was elected king of a student council carnival with a white girl as queen. We were in Elmira, New York. And Ernie, the high school was renamed after him.
Okay, great.
But he died, he died before he could completely play professional football.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anybody else? Well, I never got to meet this person, but I do want to share one more story song with you, and I'm sure some of you are going to remember this. And you'll know who I'm talking about when I say chestnuts roasting on an open fire. Who am I talking about? Nat King Cole. Now, with the younger people, I usually have to ask them, do you know who Natalie Cole is? And they'll say, oh yeah, she's a singer. Well, Nat King Cole was the singer who taught her to sing. And his father told him a story, and he turned that story into a song. And that song says, straighten up and fly right. And I hope you know or can join in, because I've added some verses to it to tell the whole story. And it goes like this.
Straighten up and fly right. Straighten up and stay right. Straighten up and fly right. Cool down, Papa, don't you blow your top. A buzzard took a rabbit for a ride in the air. The rabbit thought that everything was on the square. The buzzard went and threw the rabbit off his back, and then the buzzard went and ate the rabbit just like that. What'd he say? Straighten up and fly right. Straighten up and fly right. Straighten up and fly right. Cool down, Papa, don't you blow your top. Well, the monkey took a squirrel for a ride real high. The squirrel had to prove he was a real tough guy. The buzzard went and threw the squirrel off his back, and then the buzzard went and ate the squirrel just like that. Straighten up and fly right. Straighten up and fly right. Straighten up and fly right. Cool down, Papa, don't you blow your top. Well, the buzzard took a monkey for a ride in the air. The monkey thought that everything was on the square. The buzzard tried to throw the monkey off his back, but the monkey grabbed his neck and said, now, listen, Jack, what'd he tell him? Straighten up and fly right. Straighten up and fly right. Straighten up and fly right. Cool down, Papa, don't you blow your top. The buzzard told the monkey, you are choking me. Release your hold and I will set you free. The monkey looked the buzzard right dead in the eye. He said, your story's so touching, but it sounds just like a lie. Straighten up and fly right. Straighten up and stay right. Straighten up and fly right. Cool down, Papa, don't you blow your top. Help me with the chorus. Straighten up and fly right. Straighten up and fly right. Straighten up and fly right. Cool down, Papa, don't you blow your top. Straighten up and fly right. I want to thank you all for coming and sharing with me today. And you're welcome to come up and look at books and look at the instruments that are here. And if you have a question off the microphone, I might even answer that too. Thank you so much for coming. I appreciate your attention.
test. Ah, ah. Testing, testing, 1 2 1 2. Test, test, test. Testing, testing, 1 2 1 2. Test, test, test. Testing, testing, 1 2. Ah, 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 ah. Ooh. Dave, did you purposely put this keys on this microphone? It's up to you. Proper raspberry. Okay, so yeah, I guess that one you got it separate. Yeah, it's different. Do 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 do. Test, 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 test. Ah, ah. Test, test. Ah, ah, ah. Testing, 1 2 1 2. Ah, ah, ah. Test, test, test. Testing, testing, 1 2. Ah, ah, ah. Yeah, podium, leave the podium. We have a financial update at 3:30. Uh-huh. Yeah, podium, we got test, 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 1 2 1 2, test, test. Testing, testing. Okay. So used just to my turn.
integrated for the first time as black people in the school, it was interesting. Really, really was. Yeah.
I need to talk to you about set up the next week's so
Okay,
Miss
okay. In the meantime, we're
Roberta,
working on
yes,
a
thank you
president
so
of
see
life.
why I have the Q and A afterwards. I can't get away.
Everybody loves you.
No, it's not me. It's that
It's the
people
beautiful
have things and they don't have a chance to share.
And I like that it said at the start, oh yeah, start
Test, test, 1, 2, 1, 2. Test, test, testing, testing. Ooh. Test, test, testing, testing, 1, 2, 1, 2.